You ready to do this?
Yeah. I'm ready to delve you deeply into the halls of the Gilded Age.
Okay.
It's about as goth as it gets, actually.
This episode is about absinthe. And I have my good friend Jeanie on the show. Thanks for coming on again. And if there's anyone that knows anything about absinthe, it's you. But I guess the first question that we have to ask is, what does absinthe have to do with goth? Let alone tiki? Well, Jeannie's going to answer those questions, and then we're going to go down the rabbit hole of absinthe. And we're probably actually going to do several episodes, really deep diving. But today we're just going to scratch the surface.
Yeah, we're going to give a slight overview of what is absinthe and what isn't absinthe. And what the heck does it have to do with tiki and goth?
Yes. So, well...
So,
go!
All
How
right.
to answer all those questions.
Okay, so absinthe is a licorice tasting spirit.
Yes, it is.
So it's an anisette variant type spirit that specifically has essence of wormwood, which is Artemisia is the name for wormwood.
And that's what makes you hallucinate, right?
They'd like you to think that.
I was being facetious.
So many movies from the 1990s, which is our goth connection,
Okay.
will tell you that it will make you hallucinate.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, it is not the wormwood that makes you hallucinate.
No, this is very high alcohol content, right?
Yes.
Very high, like more than like I would imagine.
It's like many of them are 60%ers.
60%, so that would be 120 proof.
Yes. And
Wild Turkey is 101. Just saying.
so, absinthe is a really tough on you spirit. And the reputation that goes with that has to do with who was drinking it and why.
Yeah.
And when it was popular. So, where do you want to start? Do you want to start with the goth connection or the
Yes.
tiki connection?
Yeah, let's start with the goth connection.
So the goth connection. So in the 1990s, there was a powerhouse group of artists in Hollywood
Yeah.
that really popularized this whole underbelly culture
Yeah.
of sex, alcohol, drugs, death. It was all, and the more goth, the darker, the better. And that ties into all of us that like industrial music and many recovering punkers. That would be me.
I guess me too.
And anybody who loves high gothic horror or H.P. Lovecraft was drawn into the goth movement. And so there's an elegant side to this goth movement, and one of that was going after things that were important to the Romantic era.
Okay.
So the Romantic era, one of the things that is popularized in the Romantic era is absinthe. So absinthe was part of the cafe culture up until about 1912.
What years are we talking here?
So you're talking the Gilded Age. You're talking the 1800s up until about 1912 is when the axe fell for the absinthe spirit itself, and
Okay.
it was outlawed.
It was outlawed. Okay.
It was outlawed. And it was also went hand in hand with our Prohibition movement. So absinthe had made it across the pond to the United States. It was well entrenched. It's in a lot of old man cocktails. Frequently you will find an absinthe rinse on a glass.
Yep.
Or a few drops of absinthe added to something. Or the most famous cure for a hangover is a Corpse Reviver 2.
Yeah.
And that has absinthe in it.
Yep.
It has a very alcohol forward, to say the very least, herbaceous, licorice hit.
Yep.
So if you don't like herbals and you don't like licorice, you are not going to like absinthe.
No.
But what it can do to a cocktail is magic. It's like adding a bitter, but a very specific bitter. And frequently you can't tell it's there, but you can tell it has elevated everything else in the glass around it.
And that's how it is when it comes to tiki cocktails. A lot of the Don the Beachcomber cocktails have absinthe. The Zombie, the Jet Pilot. I think the Dr. Funk has it. And you nailed it on the head too. And anyone out there making any of these cocktails that requires, it's usually drops of absinthe. Usually it's Pernod. But that's because absinthe wasn't.
And we'll get into that because we have Pernod with us.
Yeah. But I will say this. When it comes to those cocktails, if you can taste the absinthe or the Pernod, you failed.
It's too heavy.
You it's supposed to be, just like Jeanie said, a presence. It should just be kind of in the background. And if it's predominant, you failed. Because I've had, like, a Zombie is a very hard drink to make. And there's 11 ingredients in it. And, like, there's been so many Zombies that I've had where I'm like, black licorice. And it's not supposed to be that way. So, absinthe is used, well, Don Beach used it a lot. And, but getting back to the first question, what does this have to do with goth?
So, what this has to do with goth is, that group, that powerhouse group.
So, who is this group?
This group is Tim Burton.
Tim Burton. Well, there you go.
Johnny Depp, Winona Ryder, Helena Bonham Carter, the crews of the movies that were the Merchant Ivory movies.
Yeah.
All of those romantics that, when you look back at Mary Shelley's Frankenstein,
Yep.
I think it started off actually with the movie Gothic.
Okay.
And that's a really cool one that you should investigate. And it's about a haunted weekend that supposedly really happened with Lord Byron and all his cronies. And his cronies were the Shelleys and the poets of the time.
Yeah.
And yes, Mary Shelley really did have her husband's heart in a box on her desk. So these people influenced people like Johnny Depp. So then they started incorporating this absinthe culture, which was the counterculture for the Gothic time, because the Bohemians and the underbelly of society and all the people who are artists, who make life interesting, were drinking absinthe because they could not afford the fancy champagnes, the fine wines, the amazing brandies. Those were out of their wheelhouse. The ballet dancers, the artists, people like Degas, Toulouse-Lautrec, Matisse, they couldn't afford that. And so for
a second I thought you were talking about Johnny Depp and Tim Burton. I'm like, what do you mean they can't afford champagne?
So they could afford, though, to bring back absinthe.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
So they read about this cool thing, the Green Fairy, hence my green orchids.
Yeah.
So the Green
Hence my
Fairy,
green Tiki Goth Club shirt.
Yes. So the Green Fairy is what they called absinthe because she was supposed to have given muse to all these artists. Well, when you're drunk off your butt, you'll think of all sorts of interesting things. And this thing was stiff as a railroad spike going through the middle of your head.
Yeah.
So the way that you had absinthe, there's a whole ritual that goes with it.
Yeah.
And goths love a good ritual. I mean, who doesn't? And so
there you go. That's a saying. Goths love a good ritual.
They do. And so Johnny Depp and his cronies, one of them, among them, Marilyn Manson. Decided.
And this is his own.
That is his own label.
Marilyn Manson has his own absinthe called Manson.
Yes. And he even paints in absinthe because the label is a painting of his where the brush has been dipped in absinthe on each stroke.
So
just his thing.
Marilyn Manson is into absinthe.
He's very much into absinthe. He was so into absinthe that he went to Europe and he worked with an absinthier to bring back real absinthe. And he put his own name on the label. And it's a fine one. It's a medal winner and hard to get hold of. But if you can get a bottle of it, it's very worth it. Mm-hmm. That's a really good label to go. So absinthe has a history. There are two kinds of absinthe.
It's two.
Yes. Okay. There's absinthe blanc, which is this one, like La Clandestine, frequently made in Switzerland. There's
Vodka Switzerland, but this doesn't look green to me.
Yes,
though.
it is not green. It is not a green fairy. That's a white fairy.
A white fairy.
Yes.
Okay.
And then there is the green fairy. And so that's Absinthe Verte. Absinthe Verte is just like Absinthe Blanc, but it is infused with herbaceous green plants.
Okay.
So other flavors in here are going to be things like anise hyssop, star anise. You're seeing a lot of anise action happening, right? Fennel.
Yep.
Things like you have to have artemisia in there because that's the wormwood.
Yeah.
But you'll also sometimes get a sneaky peat of other flavors, like they might sneak in a warm spice.
Yeah.
And each absinthier blends their own amount of and different levels of the green herbs that go in their Absinthe Verte. So they're all different. So you may love one and detest another, but you really have to try them and not just, pick it out of the air.
Okay.
So the labels that brought back absinthe to the United States are Lucid, Manzanth, and Lafite. These were they're now the big labels.
Okay.
Most of these are made in Europe and imported here, but under American direction.
Okay.
So they were to reopen our market. We have a lot of other artisanal absinthes that are produced now here in the United States that are fantastic pot-stilled wonders, which we can get into later. But these are what opened the door. So that's why we're talking about these.
So why was that door closed to begin with? You keep on saying bringing back. What happened to absinthe as far as America is concerned?
So all over the world, actually.
All over the world. Okay.
Yes, it was shut off for production. When World War I happened, we were already heading into what was called the temperance movement.
Okay.
It brought about the rise of organized crime in the United States. Thank you very much, government. And when they did that, the temperance movement was specifically to take care of dissipated behavior. Dissipated behavior is exactly what absinthe was all about. The cafe culture of Paris, in the Belle Epoque, you're talking people who it's all about. If you look at the paintings for Renoir, Degas, Matisse, Van Gogh, give me your ear.
Yeah.
It's all about absinthe culture. So they get together in cafes, they drink too much, they do too much, they paint too much. They were called the wild animals of art. And all of the writers and poets that went along with them, they were all drinking the same thing. So this was the cheap drink. If you had 2 sous, you could have an absinthe service. And so what came to you was a beautiful glass. So they came in different shapes. This is one of the oldest shapes. This is straight up and down. And a lot of absinthe ware is green, if you look at it gently. You will find this is a cut glass one that's from the turn of the century. And then, but they came typically in a glass that looked like this. This is called Pontelaire style, where it has a bump. And the bump tells you how much absinthe to put in the glass.
Okay.
When your drink is 60% alcohol, you have to put something else with it.
Yeah.
That's water. So that's when you get the magic. So this drink is called the Green Fairy because it does tricks. And I am all for stuff that does something else because I think it's totally cool. So you fill your glass to the bump, and then you have ritual.
Ritual.
Because we love ritual. So you would be served your tapette or your glass already filled with your absinthe. You would put your absinthe spoon on top of your glass and your sugar cube. And then you would put it under something like one of these contraptions.
Okay.
So this is the absinthe fountain.
Absinthe fountain. Okay.
Okay. This drink comes with a lot of extras. This drink comes with showmanship and stuff to collect and newfangled toys. You can either order fancy sugar cubes like the ones you see in front of me that say absinthe on the papers, or you can buy yourself a box of Domino, because these guys are sugar makers from Louisiana who've been doing it forever, and the grind of their sugar just turns out to be about perfect. So
this is actually a good sugar to use.
It's an excellent sugar to use if you're going to make absinthe.
Okay.
So you would... Should we do this thing? Shall I just pour you some and I show you what this stuff does? So if we're going to prepare absinthe in the traditional Parisian manner with its ritual, what you'd like to do is you need a absinthe spoon, and they come in various different kinds. These were 2 that were issued by Grand Absinthe, and that's the nice part. They come on the box outside the bottle. And so frequently with that particular brand, you'll get a spoon, or you can order them from places like Maison Absinthe or Aldine, which is a German manufacturer of absinthe ware. And so you then put your sugar cube, either your fancy absinthe paper wrapped one or your good old Domino sugar cube, onto your spoon, and then you need to have ice cold water inside your fountain or your Brudelaire, which is a single serving piece of equipment for dripping the water on there. And no matter what you hear, the traditional service method is only water, sugar, and absinthe. So you turn your spigot, and the idea is to not have a very fast stream of water like that. You want to drop like that. And you want it to hit the center of that sugar cube. And what it's going to do is it's going to do a chemical reaction called a louche. And when the oils, the botanical oils for licorice flavored things, natural licorice flavored things, are hit by water molecules, they split and they do a thing called a louche. And a louche is where those excited molecules have split apart and they will turn into a cloud. And the drink will become cloudier and cloudier the more the water is added to it. You can see it changing now. And that louche is what we consider to be a mark of quality. So the finer the botanical oils, the heavier the louche. And then how much water you add is really up to you. I happen to like mine pretty fairly watered because I don't like getting schnoggered very quickly. And so that way then I can enjoy the flavors that are in the drink. Part of the reason that you add water, beside making it less alcoholic, is that just like with scotch or anything, if you add a couple of drops of water to scotch, it opens the flavor profile of the drink. The same thing occurs when you have absinthe. You will taste a lot more of the botanicals that are more easily accessed once you add water.
So it's very cloudy.
Yes. So that's the louche. And
and the spoon actually does 2 things. You put the sugar on here, and then once it dissolves, you can actually use this to mix it up.
Yeah, you can beat it together a bit more.
Now, the interesting thing is this isn't really green now, right? It's more kind of whitish. So it's smoky. It's
yeah. There's a hint of green to it, and
okay.
If we did the clandestine, you would see that this one is much more green than the clandestine. The clandestine is white.
Okay.
Like a cloud white when you make it.
So should we try this?
Salute.
God, that's light. Not harsh at all.
No. When it's prepared properly, it is not the knuckle buster that most people associate with absinthe. It actually is much more pleasant. And they used it as a digestive or aperitif around eating. It just got a really bad rap because...
I'll be honest with you, Jeanie, I can see why it got a bad rap because this is This is way more easier to drink than I could have possibly imagined. Like, I could probably just down this.
When we got introduced to absinthe, it was by mistake. We were on our honeymoon in 1994,
Yeah.
and I picked up a stoneware bottle in a liquor store in Portugal and went, oh, hey, look, it's cafe culture. It says Absinto. I bet that's absinthe. We've never had absinthe, honey. We should take this home. Not knowing that we were trafficking a forbidden item over international lines.
So you smuggled this back.
We blissfully smuggled that back to the United States. And it went into one heck of a good party afterward, and we didn't know how to drink it, so we did drink it straight. And wow, holy cats, was that a party. If you go to New Orleans, there's a place called the Old Absinthe House. And they were serving absinthe in the time, because New Orleans is an old city.
Yeah, it is.
And when the absinthe pipeline was shut off, except for the bootleggers,
Yeah.
you really didn't have a lot to choose from. And so the spirit of New Orleans is this one. That's Absinthe. So this has a similar profile, flavor-wise, to absinthe. It was used in place of.
Yeah.
And it is one of the classic drinks of New Orleans if you go down there. Oh, that's right. It's New Orleans.
New Orleans.
Don Beach and Vic and those guys didn't have, in the 50s, most of these to work from.
Yeah.
And so they used Pernod. Well, guess what Pernod originally made before making this?
I don't know what.
They made absinthe.
Oh.
Pernod et Fils, the Pernod and Sons, was a famous absinthe maker. And so all they did with their recipe was take out the wormwood.
That's it. So the reason why it got banned was because of this wormwood problem that they thought.
Right. So
it wasn't the fact that this was very, very high potent alcohol and people were just drinking it.
No.
Because I could tell you this. I could see this. This is very easy to drink. I mean, in fact, this is probably one of the smoothest liquors I think I've ever drank behind, no, this is even smoother than drinking, say, vodka.
Mm-hmm.
There's no bite to this.
It just washes right down. And so as cafe culture was going forward, this is the devil. They blamed the green fairy for all of the aberrant behavior of the artists, the wild animals, and the cafe culture of the Belle Epoque, which was, if you think the 20s were wild, holy cow, hold on to your crinolines, because the Belle Epoque was one hedonistic, amazing time.
Yeah.
And the more you read about it, the Oscar Wildes of the world, holy cow, talk about everything a goth would love.
Yeah.
It's dark, it's moody, it's highly gothic, it's scary. There's a lot of sex going on, a lot of interesting aberrant sex going on, a lot of erotica getting painted. And
is there any goths out there that like sex?
I don't know. Do they?
I don't know.
I don't know. So that goes with this. And so the temperance movement thought, haha, we have found the devil, and we are going to take this off the market, and it will solve our problem. So the first thing they put their sights on was absinthe. They got rid of absinthe, and then they went after the whole alcohol show after that.
So wormwood or absinthe has been illegal in the United States. When did things change then?
In the 90s.
The 90s.
So we go back to Goths.
Let's go back to the Goths.
So the Goths were the ones behind the rolling ball of getting it legal. Re-legal. So they went out and they found a chemist who debunked the study that said that wormwood was the activating agent that would kill you. Because that was based on a story, a research project where they fed rats this just metric ton of Artemisia, and guess what? They died. That's what happens if you eat a metric ton of anything.
Okay.
So they did chemical studies, and they discovered it was not the wormwood that was the debilitating agent. It was actually the incredibly high proof. So once that
if it wasn't for the Johnny Depps or the Marilyn Mansons, no one would have cared enough to.
Yeah. So they added mystique. So there are two pivotal goth movies that brought this back into the forefront.
Okay, what movies are they?
Those, it's Bram Stoker's Dracula,
Okay.
starring Gary Oldman.
Yep.
There is an absinthe scene in a Belle Epoque restaurant in a private dining room where he leads her on a hypnotic journey, and it's actually more the vampire making the hypnosis happen, not the wormwood. And then the other big scene that you see in goth filming is the movie From Hell with Johnny Depp, and it's about the serial killings in the Whitechapel neighborhood done by Jack the Ripper. Oh. So, and the detective who chases them, and the story behind the story.
Yeah.
So it's a fictional tale. They don't really actually know that was the connection between the women.
Yeah.
But there is a scene where he, as an opium addict, enjoys what we call a laudanum-laced Czech service absinthe. And so that's where we get into burning absinthe.
Burning absinthe.
Which is a crime.
Burning absinthe is a crime.
It is. There's only a handful of absinthes that really you do the Czech service for. Do not please ever do that with fine quality absinthe from either the United States or Europe. Specifically Czech absinthe, it's going to be colored like this or bright teal and say hills on the side of it. Mostly found in the Czech Republic.
Czechoslovakia. So when you say Czech, you mean Czechoslovakia. Okay.
Czechoslovakia, the Czech Republic. Or in Great Britain, because it was popularized in Great Britain doing the flaming service.
Okay.
And you can't really do it with real absinthe, the one that's hand distilled with real herbals.
Yeah.
This one is a very different product, and it's for people who don't like licorice.
There you go.
So the way that you add flavor to a Czech absinthe is you put it on the sugar cube itself. You light that sugar cube on fire. You let it caramelize on the spoon. You drop it into the absinthe itself.
Yeah.
It flames for a second, and you put it out by stirring. And then you add the water. And so you get actually a caramelized, kind of hyssop flavored drink instead. It's a very different thing. But a Parisian absinthe, don't ever flame it, please. Because what they did in the movie is he was actually getting high. So he was dropping laudanum, which is opium, in a distillate of alcohol, in tiny droplets on top of his sugar cube, lighting that on fire to cook the opium. So you don't want to have raw opium. And then getting high by doing it within an absinthe service.
Yeah, so I guess the moral of this story is, Jeanie, if you want to get high, you don't drink absinthe, you just take drugs.
There's other pieces of equipment that are cheaper and easier to come by. So if you're going to start collecting absinthe ware, you can
So if you're what you're saying, Jeanie, is if you're poor and you want to get into absinthe, this is the route you take.
Right, and absinthe, good ones, come with a pretty stiff price tag. So, but there are ways to break yourself into the hobby that won't break the bank. So Grand Absinthe is the company that puts free absinthe spoons on the sides of their boxes.
Oh, nice.
So once you've bought your bottle of absinthe, you then have something to use with it.
Okay.
You can put that on a regular highball glass. You just have to remember to measure out your absinthe, because it's not going to have what you see in a Pontelaire style glass where you have a bump. The bump tells you where to fill to. Then you have what's called a tapette. A tapette is how they used to keep the drunk artists from getting too drunk. So if you ordered absinthe, you did not get the bottle. They brought you your portions in a tapette.
So what is this?
So the tapette has measuring pieces on the inside usually, and this one is actually from 1900, and so its markings have mostly worn away. But it would mark off what were the portions, and so that would be a 3-portion tapette. And you would pour one portion into your glass, add your sugar cube and your water. And so that would show up at your table with a saucer and a glass and sugar and a spoon. And so if you're just getting into collecting absinthe ware, tapettes are an interesting thing to find, because they have different advertising on them, they have different markings, they're really pretty, and they're pretty small, so they don't take up a big footprint. These glasses frequently come in Grand Absinthe's Christmas box. So you can take a look around. It's a good time of year to be trying to acquire glassware for absinthe. Then there's fancy and little. This is modern absinthe ware. This is called a slipstream.
A slipstream.
And so it's pretty much labware.
Yeah, I was going to say, this looks like something
and it's made of the same stuff. It's tempered glass. And then it's a ground glass stoppered straw that can be removed so that you can share an absinthe with somebody without polluting it. And so the absinthe goes in the bottom, and it goes to the blue line that says slipstream there down at the bottom.
Right here. Okay.
And then your sugar cube sits in the middle.
In here.
Yeah, it gets dropped
put it
through.
In there. Okay.
And it'll catch on the bump there.
Yeah.
And then you have an ice ball that goes in the top, or crushed ice.
Yeah.
And then you pour your cold water through, and the magic happens because the louche happens in the pocket in the middle, and you can actually watch the cloud happen. So we're doing this on our little linen because it can be kind of messy when you're doing it just by hand. So the sugar cube goes in there. You have absinthe to the line that says slipstream in there. And then you have a nice big round ice cube that goes in the top. Go ahead and put it in. There. And then you pour your cold water over the top. And the magic of this slipstream glass is that you get to watch the louche happen, like it comes up as kind of a magic trick. The absinthe that's within this right now is called the clandestine. Can you see the smoking of the louche around the sugar cube? It really comes up like a smoke from a pipe. And that's why they call it a slipstream, because it's a slipstream of the louche coming up into the bowl. So clandestine really louches. Really louches. So when you sip this one, and you're going to have this one to start because you're the guest, is you actually want to blow a few bubbles gently, very gently, to mix your sugar. Yeah, think of it like, remember those bubble pipes that we had as kids?
Yeah. So go ahead.
First you bubble a little, and then you sip in. It's kind of like a port pipe on steroids. Have you ever seen a port pipe? They're little blown glass, tiny globes that have a straw system about just like that. And it's the way that some people enjoy port wine.
This has more of a milkier taste to it. Where this doesn't have that absinthe taste so much than the first one.
So this is going to be sweeter.
Is it because of because it's from Switzerland?
It's very finely distilled. They distill more than once, and they really are really into making sure they get rid of all the tops and tails when it's a Swiss product. They're very, just like their watches and their banking, they're very precise. And again,
it's really smooth.
Yeah. So if you
way more smoother than I thought it was.
Your standard absinthe drinker, this is what I call a really good training wheels absinthe of the fine kind.
Yeah.
That if you don't think you like absinthe or are unsure, this is a really great one to start with.
Well, I'll say this, Jeanie. I mean, if you don't like black licorice, you're probably not going to like absinthe.
Probably not.
But if you do like black licorice, then
you're going to love it. And it has...
How do you say it?
Absinthe.
Absinthe. What's this, Jeanie? Absinthe?
So...
That's what it looks like. So you may be asking yourself, how can I join the Tiki Goth Club? Well, there is no membership. There are no fees. Well, things have changed. For $15, you can become a member of the Tiki Goth Club. What does $15 get you? It gets you your own membership card with your own number. You also get a couple stickers and a pin. I also have shirts for sale. These are $20, $5 shipping and handling. And I also have hoodies for sale that go for $40, $10 shipping and handling. If you're interested in any of this, go to my website, tikiwithray.com, and there's a tab that says Tiki Goth Club. Just click on that, and all the information you need is there.